Hey ladies, today is Sunday, September 13th, 2020, 61 weeks. So that makes Michaela 14 months and a little less than 1 week. So like 5 days, 4 days, something like that. And so last night was just so difficult with Michaela, just like so difficult. Her sleeping habits the last, I don't know, week or so have been like ridiculous to me, and I'm not even sure what to say. And quite frankly, I think a lot of it is my fault. Now there are sleep regressions that babies go through, or it could be teething, or it could be any sort of number of things for why your baby, toddler, or whatever you want to call them at this point, is not sleeping. But I say part of it is my fault because, I allowed co-sleeping. Now, there's nothing wrong with co-sleeping, and everyone has their own, everything's subjective in parenthood, right? Every baby's different, every situation is different. So this is just my experience with it. And to be honest, I really wish in hindsight that I hadn't done co-sleeping at all. Now, I'm not even getting into the safety aspects of it. I know there's a lot of pros and cons, safety, but Michaela's 14 months, so safety is less of a factor to us. It is still a factor, don't get me wrong. But when you have a newborn, a tiny little newborn, can't lift its head, can't roll over or anything like that, it is really a safety concern with co-sleeping. And let me clarify, when I say co-sleeping, I don't mean sharing a room. Sharing a room is co-sleeping as well, or some people call that co-sleeping. I mean co-sleeping, the baby sleeping in your bed with you. So this is not in regards to sharing a room. Well, maybe it is, because so when Michaela was born, or before she was even born, my thought was always that my newborn would sleep in my room, and I thought at least the first year. So I do have extra bedrooms, but I liked the idea of having the baby in the bed with me. I mean, in the bedroom with me. So of course her bassinet was in my room. And then when she outgrew her bassinet, she slept in her pack and play briefly, and then she transitioned to her crib. Now, everything up until 6 months was wasn't perfect, but it was fine. She slept in her bed, whether that was a bassinet, a pack and play, a crib, roughly up until 6 months. Now, she didn't always sleep the whole night in her bed. Sometimes she would wake up and I would get her and kind of bring her in the bed with me. And I think, that became the beginning of a problem. So up until that point, like when she was a newborn, I didn't co-sleep as much. Like sometimes, and to be honest with you, I would fall asleep being exhausted with her in my bed. And when I realized, I would put her in her bed. And it wasn't usually a problem at that age. Even when she was a younger baby, it wasn't usually a problem. Because ultimately, she slept in her bed at least some of the night. Then when she became 6 months, she just started to refuse to sleep in any bed that was exclusively hers at any point. So, here I am wanting to sleep and getting ready to go back to work because I hadn't finished maternity leave at that point. I decided to start letting her sleep with me, thinking it wasn't a big deal. And a lot of breastfeeding moms make the decision to allow the baby to sleep with them because it's easier. It's sometimes easier to let the child sleep with you because especially when they're younger and you're breastfeeding in the middle of the night. But by 6 months old, they don't need to eat at all in the middle of the night, whether that's through breastfeeding, bottle, anything. So what ended up happening was I let her sleep with me, and that became like the beginning of the end because I was never able to get her back in her bed. And when I say never, like never, like I have not been able to get her to sleep back in her bed at all. And I guess it was kind of gradual, but she was refusing to sleep in her bed, and I'm just wanting to get some sleep because I was exhausted, so I would just let her sleep with me. And then, she just wouldn't sleep in her bed. And quite frankly, she hasn't, for any significant period, slept in her bed since. And, it was convenient as far as breastfeeding, like I said, but this was when she was 6 months old, so she really didn't need to eat in the middle of the night anymore. And I do feel that her sleeping with me has made it so she continually wants to try to nurse in the middle of the night, and not because she's hungry. I think it's more so for comfort reasons and possibly a habit. I don't know. But I think it's more for comfort. Like if she wakes up in the middle of the night, or she's tossing and turning, or she's uneasy, if I nurse her, she goes back to sleep. If I rock her, which is what I did last night. Well, actually, last night I tried both. And I know she shouldn't eat in the middle of the night anymore for various reasons. It's not good for their teeth. It's not necessary, all types of stuff at this point. But that's a whole nother story. I get it. I'm totally wrong for that. But I'm just telling you what happened. So then I tried to rock her, ended up rocking for, almost 2 hours. So I guess this was at, 4 o'clock in the morning. So she didn't go back to sleep. She didn't go back to sleep until, she didn't go back to sleep at 6, because at 6, I ended up having like a major meltdown because she was not going to sleep. Now, what she was doing was fighting sleep. She would wake up, she would doze off, and she'd wake right back up. And she'd doze off, and she'd wake right back up. So I get like maybe 15, 20 seconds where her eyes were closed, and she's up again. Her eyes are closed, and she's up again. I try to lay her down, and she pops back up. And this went on for 2 hours, and I was just so frustrated that I was ready to scream, like mommy meltdown, like completely. Okay. And I realized that co-sleeping has been the bane of my existence. It created, although there are positives to it, I don't want to say there are no positives. Like I said, it's convenient for breastfeeding. If you're breastfeeding through the night, it does also create more of a bond. It helps you, with your child. But I also think it helps with clinginess, maybe. At least that's been my experience. And although I do co-sleep, I'm definitely not a fan of it. Children are notoriously, they don't sleep easy. They're restless sleepers. And what ends up happening is you have to deal with that. So if you do choose to co-sleep, you can deal with a child who's kicking or flat or rolling around or flailing. They do that. They move a lot. They move a lot when they sleep. That's just, and that's normal. But, you're sleeping next to that. So think about it. So you may not rest easy, even though it's somewhat convenient to have the child in your bed. You may still not rest as easy as you were resting, but maybe some rest is better than no rest. I don't know. Quite frankly, I think I made the wrong decision. I think, I never was a sleep training person. I've tried it. I couldn't deal with her screaming and the crying it out type situation. I've tried different methods. All of them involve some sort of crying and screaming. It's supposed to get, lessen over time. I've never found that to be the case for us. Michaela is extremely stubborn, and what would end up happening, listen to your child screaming for hours on end for night after night became a lot. So we ended up not doing it. And I'm not, saying you should or shouldn't try it. Every baby's different. I know some people, 1-2 days, if at most, their baby is on board. That wasn't necessarily our situation. I was so frustrated this morning. I just put her in her crib and said, listen, I laid her down and, and left. I just couldn't do anything else. I left the room, and it was dark, and it was like, go to sleep. And she's just literally got up and stood, because she can stand and walk, and stood in her crib and screamed for about 45 minutes before, I just seriously just needed a rest. I needed a break. I just really, I'm just speaking real. You'll read things, you'll read things and you'll see things on YouTube where people are like talking about how perfect, how easy it is for them. And maybe it is. Every baby is different. I kudos to those people. God bless you. I'm happy you have like the perfect little angel who just lays down their bed and go to sleep with no problems. That is not us. So there are pros and cons to co-sleeping. You definitely need to weigh what's best for you and your lifestyle. But I do feel like for us, co-sleeping probably wasn't the best idea. One, because I cannot figure out for the life of me how to break it without probably just letting her scream her lungs out for maybe a week. Maybe, my husband thinks it's traumatizing to let her do that. And he's always been on that side of it. And, I used to agree with that. But then once I got tired and frustrated, I'm like, listen, I'm traumatized. What about my drama? It gets to a point where mommy gets fed up too. So I don't know. I'm like, just sleep in your bed. And like I said, I do feel like for us, it makes her like she wants to breastfeed more, even though she doesn't need to, she doesn't have to, but it's so comforting to her. And also, and this, I don't know how important this is to people, but it also, cuts into your alone time with your partner. Think about it. A lot of your alone time is when your child is sleeping. And if you're co-sleeping, that's not the case anymore. So, whatever time that is, whether, it's through intimacy or watching TV or whatever, like, it's hard to do that when you have a child sleeping right next to you. We watch TV together and she's sleeping in the bed with us and we want to watch TV, it has to be very low. We can barely hear it. A lot of times I watch Netflix with subtitles so we can like read things and barely hear them. So, it definitely impacts your relationship as well. So there are things you need to take into consideration when you co-sleep. Now, I'm not saying if you don't have a partner, maybe it'll be easier. I don't know. Well, like, maybe not. I still think there are lots of other factors that, and maybe you just want to get a good night's sleep in your bed. But again, co-sleeping is very natural. Women in various countries have been doing this for generations. It is not odd to co-sleep. And again, there's lots of studies about the safety of it. I didn't even address that. I mean, I know that's usually what people talk about. I'm not talking about the safety factors. I'm talking about the more, I don't know, the factors outside of safety. Safety, of course, is number one. So you should always think about that. Again, co-sleeping, your child could fall off the bed. Where if you have your child in a proper crib or pack and play or whatever, they won't, hopefully, fall out. So there is that. So like I said, there are lots of factors. But for me, I think at 6 months old, when instead of making the decision that I just wanted to rest, to let her sleep in my bed, I really should have thought that a lot more. And maybe we would be in a different situation now, because quite frankly, I don't know how to stop this. And it leads to lots of restless nights. So this morning, she didn't go back to sleep until about 7:30, which throws off, her schedule. And this is what it is. So, I mean, listen, even with the best situations, even we weren't co-sleeping, I'm sure we would still have some crazy nights. But I just feel like co-sleeping for us has added to some of that. But again, there are some benefits, but you really just have to do what's best for you and your child and your house, and long term, not just for the night. So I think I made the short term decision for me. But anyway, so that's it, ladies. Just a little frustrated, and I will talk to you soon.